freezing here. We need some global warming.
And the voices of climate change deniers are growing ever louder. Fake news, false information, targeted propaganda, theories that climate change is a hoax are coursing through the internet.
Nothing gets my goat more than bad science and fake news. But that's exactly what's going on with climate change. The internet and mainstream media are being flooded with misinformation. Where is it all coming from? And who's behind it? I invited Kevin Albin, a leader with the Climate Reality Project here in France, to tell us the dark secret of climate change misinformation. What he told me is an epic battle for our money, our minds, and our planet. The fossil fuel empire strikes back. Hey Kevin.
Simon.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To the Professor Simon Show.
Yes, very exciting.
I'm very excited to have you. And you've recently done an interesting education seminar with the Al Gore Association.
Yes, the ex-Vice President of the United States, Al Gore, and his team, the Climate Reality Project, and I am now a Climate Reality leader. And the idea is that we are taught about the climate crisis and how to interact with the public.
Right.
And this interview, of course, is along those lines of trying to get the word out to say there is a crisis, and we need to act on it as quickly as possible.
It's a fantastic debate, and that's what we need to talk about, because not everybody even thinks that there is a crisis. And I continually am hearing people saying, bad science. You got examples of how people are being misled, or what's going on?
Well, if you think of us as a human species, of course, we are quite a mixed bag of emotions, and the whole psychology of being a human being is very complex. Yep. We're evolving all the time, and there are some people that have a great understanding of that. Right. One thing I'm very pleased that we're going to talk about is the fact that we can be and are being manipulated. Right. And we may want to resist against that, and we have to find the maturity, in fact, as a species to try and resist that and see where we should be going, the beauty of the world, the way that we are a part of nature and not trying to control it. But we are being controlled without a doubt. There are a number of people or industries who have been hoodwinking us for some time, and we are certainly being controlled. And of course, the industries that spring to mind will be the gun industry, the tobacco industry, the fossil fuel industry, definitely. Those industries that use a number of tactics very cleverly. Yes. And it's understanding why. It's understanding the reasons behind those, and it's understanding how they do manipulate our psychology.
Why would they do it?
Yes. I mean, I struggle at times, to be honest, Simon, in trying to understand that. Trying to understand how other members of the human species, and living on the beautiful world that we live in, and I've been privileged enough to see the beauty of the world. Why would they do it? Well, money is clearly a driver, without a doubt, and a way of life, a way of their lives is a driver. Their success that they have and the ability that they have to manipulate things has probably encouraged them to carry on doing it.
What are the fossil fuel companies actually doing to stop us having an energy transition into a greener alternative energies? I mean, they obviously want us to continue burning fossil fuels. So what are they telling people?
Well, since a long time ago, they have known that fossil fuels are harmful. There's a well-publicised document now from a scientist from ExxonMobil who declared that the use of fossil fuels was heating up the atmosphere. Right. So if we were members of the fossil fuel industry and we were sitting here having this conversation about how do we make this work, how do we convince people, well, we would look at a number of ways of doing that. We could deny it, we could question the science, we could question the scientists and their validity, their personality, the way they live their lives. We could give doubt into those scientists. And I think that's been a very active and a very brutal campaign against certain scientists. Very unfair, I have to say. So we can deny the fact that we're not heating up the atmosphere. We could then
just mistruths that are bad science that's very easy to understand, but just isn't correct.
Absolutely, and the way to do that would be to give a load of truths, facts that you or the general public would know about it. This is true, this is true, this is true, and then slip in there something that is completely untrue.
Classic.
But because we've all listened to, oh yeah, I get that, and now we're very easily led into the thing that isn't true, but we believe it anyway because everything else that we've heard makes sense.
A classic one I hear is that water vapor is a much bigger influence on the greenhouse effect on our Earth than carbon dioxide. And that's true, but it's missing the point.
And the same with, we spoke earlier about ice floats, so what's the issue? Well, of course, the ice is melting and it won't be any ice anymore. The Arctic is melting.
And the majority of the ice that is melting isn't floating. It's on a rocky substrate. Antarctica, it doesn't float. Sure, the North Pole is floatable ice, but no, it's a classic example. So do you think there's people, and who are they, who are coming up with these memes that we can latch onto but aren't quite true? Where do you think they're coming from?
Well, let's quote Michael Mann's book, The New Climate War, because he is a scientist who has, at times, I'm sure, had a very rough ride from these industries. But there are industries like the fossil fuel industry who employ people, PR companies, very well versed in human nature, who will use a number of different tactics to actually make things happen, convince people, get people on board. Another good example maybe is that you and I both drive electric vehicles. And you'll hear, like I hear, electric vehicles, there's a problem with the lithium batteries.
Absolutely.
Which is true.
Yes.
There is a problem with the lithium batteries. But it's like we're looking the book in a book of transition from fossil fuels to renewable energies, and we've turned one page to say, there is a solution here. But there's a problem with the lithium batteries. Well, that's no reason then not to turn the page. But the fossil fuel industry don't want you to turn that page. They will say, yes, there's a problem with the lithium batteries, get that into social media, you talk about that and convince everyone not to buy an electric vehicle because there's a problem with the lithium batteries. But of course, in our book of transition, there are many pages. And we don't know what's going to be on these other pages to say, well, actually, no, we've gone from lithium batteries, we've gone to silicon batteries, for example. And there isn't the same problem. There could be any number of things that actually will make a difference. But we have to go through that transition. What we do know is that these other pages that we've already read, they are the pages of the fossil fuel industry, and that is heating our atmosphere. That is why we have a crisis at the moment, because we are using fossil fuels. So
the energy transition is going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but it's something we have to do.
It's something we have to do. There is no doubt about it, and we are already in it.
That's just fascinating, because I hear people saying, I'm not going to dump the diesel, and they go, well, hang on, we actually have already signed up. There's an agreement with many countries to actually do an energy transition. We're in it now.
Yes.
So if you don't dump the diesel, one day you're not going to be able to drive it, maybe.
Yes.
And so, be positive. Us changing to EVs was great. I mean, but there is a downside. I mean, a car in its production uses the same amount of CO2 as any other car. It's still got steel and rubber and things, but when we're driving it, we're not producing pollutants. Yes. So it's not. It's a complicated argument.
Yes, and of course those arguments, Simon, are the small talk, are the background noise, if you like, and that's what the fossil fuel industry want us to have. They want us to have that background noise because that divides us as a community.
Right.
What we're actually looking at is saying, yes, okay, we'll accept that, but we have to make this transition. We've already started that transition, as we've just said. We have to make that transition, and we have to support that transition because with that support, the new renewable energies will actually be able to advance.
Right.
The example, of course, is that we, shockingly, I suppose, pay $11 million per minute globally to the fossil fuel industry in subsidies. Wow. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if we paid that amount of money to the renewable industry, what could we actually do with that? What could they do with that in actually changing our homes, our way of life, our transportation, everything? Right. We could have a very exciting world.
Right. Oh, it's brilliant.
And here's the rub, I think, is that the fossil fuel industry, with those in the know, those that feel that they're not denials or denialists, the fossil fuel industry actually could be the hero of the moment.
Right.
They could be the industry that saves the world.
Wow.
They could be the people that says, we have an industry that is scientifically based, we have the experts, we have the money, we have the capacity to make change, and our industry is so vast that we could make that happen.
And they need to.
And they need to, yeah. And that seems to surprise it. Why are they still backing something that is already dying and is going to die? Why are they not wholeheartedly saying, right, we will lead the way, we will be the hero of the moment, and we will change the world for the better?
Wow, what a positive message, yeah. Good. Right, they could do that.
They could do that.
Think of the technology that they have, amazing technology to drill hundreds of feet under the deep ocean. I mean, they could fit wind turbines.
They could do anything.
They could do anything.
They can do anything, yes.
Right.
And if you think the power behind them, that they have successfully, since the 1970s, easily convinced us as a human species, as a race of people, they've convinced us to carry on paying vast amounts of money for a product that is actually killing us, polluting the atmosphere, polluting the air, and is seriously killing us, and has resulted in the greatest challenge for humankind. If they can successfully achieve that, why can't they successfully change and achieve something that actually is something to be proud of?
So originally they sold us the concept of burning this weird liquid, which they called petroleum, in vehicles. I mean, they got us to change from a nice horse or even electric vehicles, which were early cars, to burning their stuff. So, good point. They could easily clean the planet.
They could easily clean the planet. Yeah. We just need, and I'd love to sit down with some chief CEOs of ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, and the likes, to sit down and say, look, this planet is a 1 in a trillion. We don't know of any other species, any other planet. No. Why on earth are we taking such huge risks in losing everything that we have?
Right.
Just doesn't make sense.
And it seems to be there's so much denial about fossil fuels that nobody's really taken responsibility for the pollution. When you burn a fossil fuel, it goes somewhere, and nobody's paying to clean that up. And if anything, the fossil fuels companies are blaming us as the motorist, for producing the pollution, where they are actually the polluters.
Absolutely, and that's another good tactic of the fossil fuel industry.
Right.
Yeah, let's say to the members of the public, it's your fault.
Right.
It's you eating too much beef. It is you consuming too much plastic. It is you doing too many air miles.
Right.
That's your fault. So it's your responsibility. So you need to become vegetarian, or you need to travel less on with planes and all those things. And again, it's all that background noise which distracts us from the real subject. The real subject is we have to stop fossil fuel use. It's as simple as that. Everything else is background noise. Yes, because of the situation and the lateness of the hour, yes, we do need to do those things. We do need to eat less beef, and we do need to travel less, and we need to be conscious of our plastic use, of course, because we've left it so late.
But what you're saying is it's a psychological trick. It's a way of manipulating us as a population, is to distract from the billions of gallons of fuel that they're actually making, to blame you for putting 10 litres of 4-star in your Ford Capri.
Yeah, and I'd invite everyone, your readers, your listeners, your subscribers, but everyone of the planet to wake up and have a maturity to say, actually, we need systemic change. We cannot live the way we've been living. We need to have an enormous amount of change and actually enforce that. We need to demanding that of our governments. We need to be demanding of that of all of these industries to say this is unsustainable. You need to change, and get everyone on board with that.
Right.
And some of that systemic change, I believe, actually needs to come from the next generation. Of course, they are not responsible for what the situation, they weren't even born, most of them. So we need to start educating the next generation to be environmentally aware.
Right.
And the expression I've heard, which I really like, is the environmental citizens. And that is that when people are environmentally aware, when they have environmental knowledge, they're much more likely to make decisions based on the environment.
Right.
And that's what we need. We need to understand that we are a part of nature. Nature's not there to serve us. We're an integral part of it. And much the same as the success when there is a great deal of biodiversity, we need to have great biodiversity in everything. All species, plants, trees, animals, and even the human race needs just the same biodiversity, which means we need to take care not just of white colonial males. It needs to be indigenous peoples. It needs to be absolutely everyone on the planet. We need to take everyone with us at the same time.
Kevin, another industry that have used lobbying to influence their customers is the tobacco industry. And just like the fossil fuel industry, they knew that there was a relationship between smoking and cancer, but decided to extend their sales by using clever techniques. In fact, they might have even used literally the same companies, the same PR companies that you mentioned, that the fossil fuel companies are using today for roughly the same argument. Is that something you know about?
Bits of it, and you're absolutely right. It is the same companies. You know, the companies that they're going to use are the companies that are successful. If there's one of those industries that has to convince us to carry on using their product, even though that product is harmful, and cigarettes are or tobacco is a very good example, because it is very clear it causes cancer and other illnesses. It's marked on the packet that it can seriously harm your health. So they're going to use those same companies, and of course, and I can't remember which year it was, but one of the tactics used was that tobacco, smoking cigarettes, was predominantly a male thing, and there was a campaign to encourage women to smoke, using the will or the desire of women to be independent. You know, here, you can smoke like a man. You know, you have that independence. You have the right.
That's so sophisticated. So they're using a social change psychology, and ultimately they're doing it only to increase their marketing.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
and this is where I said earlier is that, we as a race of people, as a species, we have to have a maturity of not being led down the road by these companies or these PR companies, and having a maturity to say, actually, that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stand my ground, and I'm not going to do that. That's not good for my health. That's not good for the environment. We have to find that maturity somewhere in our evolution to say, no, I don't do that. I don't accept that. And not allow these companies to run away with vast amounts of money and at the same time harming our health.
Another thing that I see all the time, coming from a broadcast background, is broadcasters want to be fair and look at two sides of a debate. I mean, but with climate change, it seems like that shouldn't work. I mean, there isn't really a non-climate change science out there, so why should you always, when you're talking about climate change, have to put in provisos, if it's real, if you believe in that? They just don't need to do that.
One of the radio programs I've always enjoyed over many years was the Today program with the BBC in the UK, even now that I'm living here in France. And I find they're very guilty of that. There is no need to carry on debating about climate change. The IPCC have declared that it's a code red. It's very obvious. Everyone knows. Everyone understands that we are in a crisis. We don't need those sorts of debates to talk about. Is it real? Is it this or is that? I feel, and I've written to the BBC about this. I feel that journalists, the media, have a responsibility. Yes, they're going to argue that there is a responsibility to be fair. I absolutely agree with that. But there is a responsibility to move this in the right direction. There is only one direction that this has to go. We want to survive or we're not going to survive. We have to go down this road of survival, and we have to do all the things to make that survival a reality. And journalism and media have a responsibility, in my opinion, as with everyone else, to push us down that road and make that happen.
But that's another classic example, like your wonderful example of women's rights and smoking as a marketing opportunity. The PR companies are using the balance, the fairness of good media to extend the debate. And when we extend the debate, we're pumping another gallon of petrol.
Yes. Yes, the more we keep talking about it, and this is Greta Thunberg, where she said the blah blah blah. That's her trying to say, and quite rightly, is that what are we doing? We're still COP 26. There's 26 COPs where we've been debating climate change and the need for change and the need to take radical systemic action now. And this COP 26 exactly the same, and this was heralded as it's do or die. And we walked away from that with a very loose agreement. None of it's binding. We're still debating what's happened to the $1 billion per year to pay to developing countries. There was a great outpouring at the end of COP26 from developing countries to say, we're very disappointed. This means lives, and it does mean lives. People are going to die, and we are still going down this road of let's debate it more. Let's have a meeting. Well, what's the outcome of the meeting? To have another meeting? It's just nonsense.
COP27.
Yeah, absolutely. And we herald the fact that it's in a year's time. And it's going to be in a developing country, in Egypt. You can see those as positives, okay, but that's not really moving us forward. We have to be far more proactive in this crisis at the moment. We have to take radical action, and we have to do it now.
Kevin, one of the things I'm continually hearing is, okay, so we in the West cut our fossil fuel use, but what about all those other countries? But hang on, we use way more than them. Isn't there an issue of equality going on here? I mean...
Yeah, there is and it's an argument I hear a lot, and there is a lot of misinformation about that. automatically blame the likes of China or India, and I hear it all the time, why should I cut my emissions what about China and India? What are they doing about their emissions? When in fact some other countries, such as the United States, are far worse polluters, if you like, on certain things. One of the things that on the Climate Reality Project training was about equality and equity, and there's a little analogy, it was a drawing in fact, was about 3 stick characters on sloping ground trying to look over a wall. One person on the right hand side could easily, because he was on the high ground, could easily look over. The middle person was somewhere in between there, just jumping up like this, and the third person was well down and couldn't see over the wall at all. And of course, if we look at equality, we would give each of them a box to stand on, and so therefore the first person could see even higher. The second person could now see, but the third person still on the sloping ground couldn't see. But when we talk about equity, it's giving what the person needs. So the first person doesn't actually need a box because he could already see over the wall. So let's give his box to the third person. Now that person has 2 boxes and can see over the wall, as can now all 3 of them can see over the wall. And that's the thinking that we need with regards to some of the countries, the developing countries we call them, but the countries that need our help, we need to bring them along, and we need to actually listen to what they need, and then we need to help them do it. This isn't the time to say, we're okay, Jack, we can do what we want. We actually need to listen to them. And the virus, the pandemic, is a good example of that. We are all struggling again in Europe with now another variant. We talk about that it was first discovered in South Africa, when of course very few Africans have actually received the vaccine because it just hasn't been sent to them. Wow. So we're talking about countries that do not have the money that developed countries have. They don't have the capacity, they don't have the infrastructure. And if we're just going to ignore them, well, the virus is going to continue to spread and become and mutate and be different variants, and we'll all continue to struggle with it because we haven't done we're not giving equity to the countries that actually need it. The people that need our help need to be given what they need, not what we think they need or what is equal for everyone else in the world. That's not going to work. We have to give the people with the most need the most things we can give them.
Wow, that was a fantastic discussion. Thank you very much, Kevin. We ended the day as 2 typical blokes comparing the size of our EVs. But what I learned from Kevin was, yes, a lot of dirty tricks have gone on, but a very positive message. And that is, if the fossil fuel companies are so good at making us buy their dirty diesel, they can use their immense influence to speed up the necessary energy transition. They've got away for nearly 100 years in not paying for the pollution that they cause. It's time for them to change and for us to stop burning stuff. The truth is out there.